only not decrease the size of the recreational area, but they wanted to actually increase it by taking over the soon to be defunct Phillips 66 petroleum refinery and expanding the recreation area to include RV campgrounds and motocross, areas. And so it seems like State Parks is acting in direct opposition to what everybody along the coast wants. And they're really looking at it through this revenue stream lens, which in itself is kind of faulty. State Parks has actually been engaged in destroying nest sites in areas where off-road vehicles frequent. The nests are called scuffs. Male snowy plovers will come and they will dig out a little spot in the sand, which is called a scuff, and then the female will come lay her eggs there. Well, state park officials have actually been going out and destroying those scuffs to try and discourage nesting. Arroyo Grande Creek, which spills into the ocean right there in Oceano, is a major steelhead trout stream and slope. And returning steelhead swim upstream from Oceano Beach to spawning grounds in the upper Arroyo Grande riparian area. The creek is regularly crossed by off-road vehicles, especially during rainy seasons. And so the impact on steelhead trout migration is fairly significant based on the information from Creeklands Conservation and other groups that have been studying this phenomenon.
And next we'll talk a bit about environmental degradation. The vehicles on the beach contribute to the disruption and destruction of the dune habitat, the vegetation on the beach, as well as wrack on the shoreline. This all contributes to increased erosion all along the coastal areas and within the dunes themselves. And these degraded shorelines leave this habitat, as well as the nearby communities, vulnerable to rising tides, as well as less resilient to any other disruptions in the habitats. And we see increased litter from visitors to the ODSVRA, litter on the dunes and at the sites within Oceano dunes, as well as at the entrances near the dunes. And there have been many recent studies that have been connecting tires to leaving behind microplastics. And so when we allow vehicle use as the primary use of this area, this increases microplastics within our coastlines, as well as crossing of the Arroyo Grande Creek contributes to the degradation of this creek and its connection to the ocean.
And on a further note, for 3 years between 2017 and 2020, students at Camp Keat, which is a 5th, 6th grade outdoor science school for students from Kern County, were collecting litter at the Grand Avenue entrance to the dunes. It was mandated as part of our agreement with State Parks so that we could use the dunes for outdoor education. In 2019, in one semester, collecting 3 days a week, our students managed to keep over 2,000 pounds of litter from reaching the ocean. We documented our findings, we cataloged and weighed what we found, and that information was then turned over to EcoSLO for part of the database.
Great, yeah, thank you for sharing that, John. We see how both misuse of our ecosystems plays into all of this. So next, we are going to dive into public health. We see the communities near Oceano are being exposed to toxic air quality, and this is directly connected to the nearby dunes. And as we see OHVs and vehicle use increase habitat degradation and erosion, we see increased dust emissions and sand movements, which is causing this toxic air quality within the nearby communities. And in addition to air quality, we also connect how beaches are no longer pedestrian friendly, and we see the safety of pedestrians put in harm's way when there is unsafe vehicle activity on the beach. And this prevents local access to these beaches in order to promote public health and well-being, and promote getting outside and getting outdoors, as well as seeing the county jail and local first responders and hospitals being impacted by operations of the ODSVRA. So dangerous activity as well as injuries and even deaths contributing to unsafe conditions. And this is directly tied into equity and accessibility. Accessibility to nature is part of public health. There are few available parks and natural spaces in Oceano, so inhibiting the ability to access these spaces is directly impacting the public health of these nearby communities. Heavy vehicle use creates loud, busy, polluted, and dangerous beaches, and this deters pedestrian use and any other non-vehicle recreational activities. It also means that these beaches only cater to those with the ability and the desire to use vehicles on the beach, and it only becomes a safe space for people who have vehicles and have the ability to take their vehicle out there. And then next we'll talk about the local economy. So for many years, the nearby communities have been told that their economy is dependent on the ODSVRA. However, a 2021 study found that the ODSVRA has no significant impact on the San Luis Obispo County economy, and that the ODSVRA is actually preventing investment in creating sustainable beach communities around Oceano dunes. As Bonnie talked about earlier, we don't see much investment in local businesses, in hotels, and in creating a space for people outside of the off-roading community to come and enjoy Oceano. And that includes local communities who aren't part of the off-roading community. And this summer, when the ODSVRA was temporarily closed, we actually saw a significant boost in the local economy, even with the pandemic. And they saw people flocking to the beaches to enjoy the outdoors and do some socially distanced fun at the beach and enjoy their summertime. And this was corresponding with a boost in local economy and the money made in local businesses. And so next we are going to talk about the land's connection with the Chumash peoples. And we actually have a clip by Fred Collins, who is the tribal chair of the Northern Chumash Tribal Council.
And this was presented at the 2019.
My name is Fred Collins. I'm tribal chair for the Northern Chumash Tribal Council. You've heard me speak many times over the years concerning the Oceano dunes and the town of Oceano. We have always protested the use of the dunes in a way that is deteriorating to the life of the Native American people and the Native American community, which were the first people. We can no longer walk on the beach in a peaceful way. We can no longer hike in the dunes in a peaceful way. Our sites are being destroyed. And there's no connectivity for the indigenous people. Just recently, we had tremendous input on your environmental justice document that has been implemented into the Coastal Commission. The laws that provide for the Coastal Commission to make decisions that are in accord with the Native American community has risen to a new level. And we beseech you. We say, this is the example that you need to use in this new environmental justice, social justice document. It's time for Oceano to stand on its own, be a real beach community, and stop the disrespect to the people of color and the people of low income. It's time to stop the destruction of the Oceano dunes. And you'll see in our comments to this document, we have great concerns about the implementation of these new words. Words are only words if they don't work in action. So we're asking you to take action. Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak to you. And we look forward to your work, and we look forward to working with you in making this a better place for all people.
And thank you, Fred Collins, for those words. It is really important to acknowledge that we are on too much land, and that these spaces are important, not only to not only to promote public health and environmental well-being, but also in order to make sure we prioritize spaces of importance to the Chumash peoples. And then we are going to talk a bit about environmental justice in regards to Oceano dunes. We discussed earlier about what environmental justice is and environmental racism is. However, it is important to acknowledge that this is specifically an environmental justice issue because of the inequities we see in who bears the burden of the many issues surrounding the ODSVRA and Oceano dunes. We see nearly 2 million annual visitors that are impacting the residents of Oceano, and all of the negative impacts on the environment and public health are impacting the local communities around Oceano dunes. And there has been 40 years of inaction and disregard, despite increasing evidence of how the environment and local communities are impacted by the ODSVRA. And Oceano is a predominantly Hispanic/Latino community, and they are being disproportionately impacted. And this directly connects to the concept of environmental racism, because we are seeing a community that is predominantly a community of color being continuously harmed by this issue surrounding the ODSVRA. And Oceano itself was designated a disadvantaged community and opportunity zone by Governor Brown in April 2018. And this connects to the percentage of the community that is low income. And we need to remember that when we see communities of low income as well being disproportionately impacted, and as well as disregarded when these issues are brought up time and time again, it is especially important to take action. And as well, that the ODSVRA is just one of many public health and environmental issues that Oceano faces. As Bonnie discussed earlier, this is only one of those issues that we are diving into today. And so these issues building up is a big part of the problem. And so next, Andrew will talk about the California Coastal Commission's environmental justice policy. And the California Coastal Commission is intended to address coastal issues in California and make sure that we are properly taking care of these coastal areas.
Yes, it is. And it's worth mentioning that it was created by the people of California in a ballot initiative in 1972. And 4 years later, the state legislature created the California Coastal Act. And ever since then, the Coastal Commission has been administering the Coastal Act, which, putting it as briefly as possible, is the reason why the coast of California today does not resemble the Gold Coast of Florida and Miami Beach, which is wall-to-wall high-end hotel resorts and millionaire condos and mansions, all of which are fenced off to make sure that you do not have any access to the beach unless you can afford it. In California, the beach belongs to the people, and access to the coast and protection of the coastal resources is the purview of the Coastal Commission. So thank you, California Coastal Act, and thank the California Coastal Commission for that, for making that happen. And about 5 years ago, the Coastal Act was amended to include an environmental justice policy, specifically to include environmental justice issues whenever the commission is weighing in on coastal land use issues or appeals of the coastal development projects, which come to the commission from city councils and county boards of supervisors, the ability to appeal things like coastal development permits to the Coastal Commission is free to all citizens of California by statute. Another good reason to live in California. I will not read the entire environmental justice policy, but it is worth quoting several sections that are especially pertinent to what we are discussing today. It does note that generations of injustices towards California's Native American communities, people of color, and other marginalized populations through forms of discriminatory land use policies, desecration of sacred lands and cultural resources, and concentration of environmental pollution has resulted in inequitable distribution of environmental benefits and burdens, and still disproportionately burden these communities today. Environmental justice stakeholders across the country have noted that wherever low-income communities and communities of color are predominantly concentrated in coastal regions, they are frequently disconnected from the coast itself by both social and physical barriers. Historic inequalities, as well as California's growing population, changing demographics, judicial decisions, and policy choices continue to shape development patterns and population shifts that widen the disparity gap. Not only is equitable access to the coast for all Californians essential, so is protecting coastal natural resources for future generations. The Commission will use its legal authority to ensure equitable access to clean, healthy, and accessible coastal environments for communities that have been disproportionately overburdened by pollution or with natural resources that have been subjected to permanent damage for the benefit of wealthier communities. Coastal development should be inclusive for all who work, live, and recreate on California's coast, and provide equitable benefits for communities that have historically been excluded, marginalized, or harmed by coastal development. And finally, understanding that public health and the health of natural ecosystems are inextricably intertwined. Ecological impacts are felt first by disadvantaged and at-risk communities, and that there is no environmental justice without a healthy environment. The Commission will continue to prioritize the protection of coastal resources. This includes sensitive habitats, watersheds, water quality, marine biodiversity, and biological productivity. So this is the reason why we are going to be talking more and more about the Coastal Commission going forward in this panel. And right now, I believe Bonnie is going to make further connections to the environmental justice policies of the Coastal Commission, environmental justice in general, and Oceano and the Oceano dunes.
Thank you, Andrew. And so, as we talked about earlier, this environmental justice policy directly connects to that environmental justice in Oceano dunes, and we see those similar patterns of inequity in access to these coastal areas, as well as the ODSVRA being a physical boundary that inhibits local communities from accessing these beaches. And next, we are going to have Andrew talk a little bit about the general history of the ODSVRA. Briefly though, Andrew, we're running out of time.
This is my brief version of the state park management failures at the Oceano Dunes SVRA, which is 4 decades long. And it's the reason why the Coastal Commission is about to do something historic, we hope, come March 18th, and we hope you'll be a part of it. For 38 years, the California Department of Parks and Recreation has failed to comply with its coastal development permit, which required designation of a permanent entrance and staging area within 18 months of the permit of state parks receiving its permit for the ODSVRA, which happened in 1982. For 32 years, the ODSVRA has failed to conform with San Luis Obispo County's local coastal program, which requires the designation of 580 acres of county-owned land within the park as a buffer between the riding area and the Dunes Preserve, and which prohibits off-highway vehicle activity in environmentally sensitive habitat areas, which is most of the Oceano Dunes State Vehicular Recreation Area. Interim I would make air quotes, vehicle limits were set 19 years ago and have never been adjusted. State Parks has failed to conduct a carrying capacity study to determine how many vehicles the dunes ecosystem can withstand without long-term environmental damage. For 17 years, State Parks has refused to heed the advice of their technical review team's scientific subcommittee to study the potential benefits of a year-round closure of the SVRA's snowy plover nesting area to vehicle traffic. Right now, they are closed seasonally for nesting. Then they take the fences out and the cars run over all the rack and the nests and flatten everything that the plovers use to build their nests. And for 11 years and counting, State Parks has disputed the findings of a peer-reviewed study by the San Luis Obispo County Air Pollution Control District, which found that dust plumes blowing off the dunes, significantly the result of OHV activity, are the reason why this area of the county is frequently the site of the worst air quality in the country. State Parks has devoted a lot of funding and energy to dispute the study's findings, has dragged its feet on implementing agreed upon dust control measures. And in the words of the former air pollution control officer for San Luis Obispo County, quote, "I have never dealt with a more recalcitrant or unscrupulous organization than State Parks OHV division. Their corporate culture is simply not conducive to solving any issue that's not beneficial to their core mission to enhance and expand OHV parks." End quote. And that pretty much brings us up to date.
Thank you, Andrew. So next, we are going to talk a little bit about where that leaves us off now. So in 2019, the California Coastal Commission reviewed State Parks' permits. And in this review, they told State Parks to submit a new management proposal. And within this, the California Coastal Commission directed State Parks to consider reducing driving in the dunes. However, at the end of 2020, after much delay, State Parks finally gave their management plan draft. However, State Parks did not follow many of the CCC's suggestions. They actually proposed the expansion of the ODSVRA into Oso Flaco Lake, which many local people will know. This is a beloved bird watching spot and an area of threatened habitat. And so in February 2021, this month, the California Coastal Commission released their staff report. And in this, they said that State Parks has not been compliant with the Coastal Act and local coastal programs. As Andrew just demonstrated, this has been decades of this happening. It is not new. So now, March 2021, next month, the California Coastal Commission will be meeting to talk specifically about Oceano dunes, and they will be reviewing State Parks' plans that they have proposed. So this is going to be a really important opportunity for anyone and everyone to speak out. And we will talk a little bit more about that in a couple minutes. So now we are going to do a brief Q&A session. I'm going to stop sharing our screen so you can see our faces. If you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and we will pick a few questions to answer. So yes, we would love to take any and all questions or things you would like to clarify. I'm going to scroll through the chat and see if we've already gotten any. And we got one question, which is, as students, what can we do? And stay tuned. In about after this Q&A session, we will be walking you all through how you can have your voices heard.
There is a question from Joy. It says, what does it mean to be designated as an opportunity zone?
Oh, thank you for that, Charles. Bonnie, could you dive a little more into the details on that?
I truly can't remember exactly what the specific requirements were. There were some certain criteria that you had to meet, which meant being low income and various things that were not good, and that they would set up some tax incentives for people to invest in the community, invest in beneficial buildings for the community. Some communities have abused that opportunity zone status. And right now, as far as I know, no one's even tackled it here in Oceano. So it's like I said, we don't have a planning committee. We don't have a government that deals with that sort of thing. So it's just sort of sat there on the shelf. It just basically means we're a disadvantaged community that met certain criteria.
Thank you, Bonnie.
And Charles may know more. Probably does.
So
I quickly add.
great, thank you.
Yeah, basically it gives investors a tax break, and the tax break is larger the longer they leave their money in, which is, potentially an incentive for people to come in. One of the things we're really excited about here is that with the new Biden administration, there is going to be lots of federal money for infrastructure development, and Biden has pledged that 40% of that money will go to low-income communities, communities of color, and we want to be aligned and ready to, get on board that Green New Deal economic development train when it comes through Oceano. Better than an oil train, right, Andrew?
Slight improvement.
I want to answer Michael's question. Michael answers, what do you gauge the chances of the CCC can end the ODSVRA? And can't tell you how many times I've been asked that question. So I have this board. That's all I know.
Just to clarify one point that we do want to emphasize, we're not talking about ending the ODSVRA. We are talking about shifting, and the Coastal Commission is very much talking about shifting the nature of the recreation there from the very high impact activities that are going on now to low impact activities like camping, some limited car camping, hike in and bike in camping, and just walking on the beach and flying kites and doing the things that people do on the beaches and beachfront communities the length of the coast of California.
Yeah, that's a really
It'll be open.
That's good.
Yeah, not closing off the beach, actually opening up more opportunities for use of the beach is really the important message here. And I actually wanted to end on one last question. Sharon, I believe, asked, do you think it is more important right now to communicate with the Coastal Commission, re-ending OHVs totally, or to communicate with state parks, the many problems of the Public Works Plan? I would say both are important, but perhaps Bonnie or anyone else could answer. Or Andrew, go for it.
For a couple of reasons, it's more important to communicate with the Coastal Commission than state parks. And the most practical one is the fact that the Coastal Commission is actually going to be weighing in on amending their coastal development permit on March 18th. They also have the final say over the Public Works Plan. The Public Works Plan will be submitted in draft form at that March 18th meeting, but there's no action that's going to be taken on the Public Works Plan on March 18th. So Coastal Commission is up first, and the Coastal Development Permit, not the Public Works Plan, is the place where they can really make a difference and have the most impact. Second reason is, as you may have divined at this point, asking state parks to do the right thing and play nice and be cooperative in the volunteer spirit by amending their horrible Public Works Plan draft into something they were told it should have been many, many times over is kind of a rote exercise. They certainly need to hear from you. You have until March 18th, coincidentally, to get comments into state parks on their plan specifically. You should certainly do that. But in terms of priorities, go for the Coastal Commission.
Can I just make a follow? It seems like if we are successful at having CCC ban OHVs, then a lot of the plan that the parks is making becomes unnecessary. Okay. I thought I was thinking about that correctly.
Great thoughts and commentary. And this is actually a perfect segue. We are going to wrap this up by talking about how your voice is powerful. Oops, sorry. Gonna present again. And so you all do have a power in this. And the main thing is getting the word out. And so this means talking with friends, talking with family about Oceano Dunes and what you have learned today, or what you've already kind of known. And I just want to emphasize that every conversation we initiate is important. That could mean sitting at a restaurant in Oceano Dunes and talking with your wait staff if you're comfortable with having those conversations, or bringing up in a class for Cal Poly students where it's, you know, connected with your coursework. And so those conversations are really important, as well as telling the public officials that the SLO County community cares about Oceano Dunes. So you saying you care is an indicator that the SLO County community cares. And this means sending emails and letters, speaking at city council meetings. Two that are coming up is the Grover Beach City Council meeting on March 8th and the Guadalupe City Council meeting on March 9th, as well as speaking at the March 18th Coastal Commission meeting that we talked about earlier. And we'll actually dive a little more into the details of how you can tell your public officials that you care about Oceano Dunes. The first is contacts. So if you have your phone available or if your device can screenshot, I recommend you screenshot this list of contacts. These are who to email. So I know we all get a million emails right now. However, this is a really easy way for you to voice your opinion and make sure it's getting to people with power. So you can either screenshot this, or the QR codes will take you to two of the websites here. But these are all really important contacts to make sure that the leaders who are part of the decision-making process know what we as the SLO community think is important. And we can come back to the slide if you need it. You can send it in the chat. But next, we are going to talk specifically about speaking at the California Coastal Commission meeting. So this is on March 18th. The California Coastal Commission meeting is going to be specifically about Oceano Dunes and addressing the management plan that State Parks has proposed. It's the Public Works Plan is the official title for that. So again, if you are able to pull your phones out, these QR codes will take you to the websites where you can get more information about that. You can also Google California Coastal Commission meeting, and you'll see the March 18th meeting as one of the options on their website. And again, your involvement and your ability to make sure that your voice is heard at these meetings is really important in this matter. And signing up to speak, though intimidating, it's 1 minute of talking, and you've got a bunch of talking points that you learned about today. So if that's something you're interested in, I recommend that you either scan the QR codes on your screen right now or go to the California Coastal Commission meeting website, which I can send in the chat as well. And so we're going to quickly go over some tips to make speaking a little less intimidating. Most meetings, the California Coastal Commission meeting is over Zoom. So that brings a whole set of unique challenges. However, the best part is that you can be in your pajamas while you do it if you'd like to. So The key things is just to have your Zoom updated. If you understand how to raise your hand and mute and unmute, that's about all you need to know how to do on Zoom. Also, making sure your comments are under a minute, which is nice. You don't have to go on for too long, just get your points across, and then you can be out of there. And then address your comments to the staff CDP recommendations, as well as thank them. Like, these are real people, but you don't need to address any one person. You do not want to address any one person. You're addressing the California Coastal Commission. And then lastly, if you really want to speak, but you're worried about, forgetting, feel free to let us know if you need a text alert. Bonnie, if you could put the People for the Dunes email, or whichever email you think would be the best to reach out for that. If people are interested in getting a text alert, we can send that out to remind you that is coming up.
One other point, Gianna, sign up now to speak,
Yes.
because they're allotting a finite amount of time to this issue. There's going to be a finite number of speakers.